Hello and welcome to Saturn Returns with me, Caggie Dunlop. This is a podcast that aims to bring clarity during transitional times where there can be confusion and doubt. Today I'm thrilled to be sitting down with the wonderful Ella Mills, the founder of Deliciously Ella. Ella was at the forefront of the vegan movement at the age of 23, which started out as an exploration of ways to regain her own health, but it soon grew into a hugely successful empire. She runs it alongside her husband, who is also her business partner, and her ethos has always been to make healthy living easy and exciting and accessible for people. Since beginning her blog in 2011, Ella has gone on to sell 1.5 million books in the UK, and her recipes have been translated into 30 different languages. As well as being a hugely successful businesswoman, she is a mother of 2 young girls. I've been in touch with Ella for a while, and Ella is a fan of the Saturn Returns podcast, which I'm very honoured by. And I went on her podcast when I was doing sort of the rounds for my book, and I loved connecting with her. And so I was thrilled to get her on the show for this season. And she speaks so beautifully, so eloquently, but what really came through in this conversation for me was this theme of autonomy. And it is so important, and it is so Saturnian to be able to have autonomy over our lives, over our decisions, and it really ties in with authority. And I think that that's something, particularly as women, we can find really hard to do because we have been conditioned to subcontract our authority over to other people. And so I was really impressed by Ella's ability to constantly come back to herself in challenging times, even when other people were telling her to do things differently or thought that, her and her husband were crazy for doing what they were doing. And it shows that it pays off. And so I hope that some of the takeaways for this conversation for you guys is to step into your power, to step into your truth, and to have autonomy over your own lives. I hope you enjoy this episode. And welcome to Saturn Returns.
Thank you so much. I've been a avid listener for a long time, so it's almost quite bizarre to be now in the episode.
That is incredibly flattering. And obviously the last time I saw you was when I was on your show. But for the audience, I feel like everyone is going to know who you are. But for the audience that doesn't know, would you be able to introduce yourself in your own words, like what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ella. I started a company called Deliciously Ella as a exploration to regain my health after a very low period. So this was back in 2011 into 2012. And I've been running that and growing that with my husband ever since. And the real focus is just trying to make healthy living easy and exciting for people. And I've also got 2 little girls, so that's the other half of my life. So it's full chaos and totally brilliant.
Which we were just discussing, and I can't wait to get into. But to bring it right back to the beginning, in 2011, obviously you were at the forefront of this movement. Not many people were doing it. It was kind of, obviously it's become very much a common thing now, and people have a lot more vocabulary around it and awareness. But at the time they didn't. So what... You just touched on it, but what really, could you take us back to that moment in time and what was going on for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, no one was talking about the link between how we lived our lives. And obviously a big part of that is diet, but obviously our health goes beyond just what we eat into the way that we live our lives and our health. And so I always feel like I have to fully preface, sitting here at the end of 2023 saying, this was a revolutionary concept because
it was.
I know, but it seems so strange today because it's, as you said, it's much more part of kind of common vocabulary and conversation and lexicon today. But it just absolutely wasn't at that point. And I spent 2011 in that hospital. I was very, very ill with a condition that affected my autonomic nervous system. So I couldn't control all these systems and processes that should happen totally automatically, whether that was controlling my heart rate or my digestion, circulation, all sorts of issues with my immune system. I had chronic fatigue, so I was sleeping kind of up to 18 hours a day, brain fog, chronic pain. I spent almost 3.5 years, I think it was, on antibiotics. Used to have to go into hospital for antibiotic drips, for all these infections. you name it, I had it basically. And
how old were you at the time?
So I was 20, turning 21.
That's really tough.
So very young, and quite a strange age, I think, because it's that age where the world's really in front of you. And I guess actually it's funny, I hadn't thought about it until December. It's very relevant, I guess. I know it's a little bit earlier, but it's this Saturn returns and this kind of moment of transition in your life. And
but you do, because you go through Saturn squares and oppositions. So like Saturn has 7-year cycles in a way as it does its full orbit. So every 7 years we have these like mini initiations, and 21 is one.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel that very strongly, that it's this real tipping point in your life, you know, when you're becoming gently your own person and starting to understand who you are, and like how is the adult world going to open up for you, and what do you want to explore. And so just as I felt that I was kind of getting a sense of independence and a little bit more self-belief and autonomy, that all fell away. And as everyone around me was looking to their future and applying for jobs and thinking about what they wanted to do, I was sort of faced with this idea, well, if I stay as I am, you know, I won't be able to work. I'll live at home with my mum forever, and what does that look like? So it was a very interesting, for want of a better word, time, I think, to be so unwell. And I also just didn't have the tools to deal with it very well, and so I just shut myself away. I felt it was easier not to talk about it, and I found finding any sense of vulnerability around it incredibly difficult. I didn't like that it made me feel alien or other, and I just desperately wanted to fit in. And it was so clear that stopped that from being the case.
Was it, if you don't mind me asking, was it quite a quick thing that came on, or was it over time?
No, it was so quick. It was really within a week or so that I had gone from being totally normal to thinking, wait, something's not quite right. And 2 months later, the symptoms had kind of fully set in, and I was incredibly unwell, fully debilitating. And so yeah, it was incredibly fast. So things kind of turned upside down within the space of a summer holiday from uni. And I stayed like that for about almost 9 months of really just kind of consistently waiting for someone else to have an answer, and consistently thinking, well, when I try the next medication or when I meet the next doctor, they will know what to do and they will solve the problem for me. And in retrospect, I think in the illness, but outside of the illness as well, that has always been one of probably my biggest challenges, is I guess wanting people to find the solution for you and not always being quick enough to find it for yourself, or have the self-belief to find it for yourself. And it was realizing when I tried the last drug from the doctor that I was working with, and it didn't do anything. It actually gave me some quite complicated side effects that arguably just made me a little bit worse. And I remember so vividly, it's really like strong memory for me, sitting on the floor of my room on the phone to him, and he said, like, I don't have anything else. I don't have anything else I can offer you. I don't really have any more suggestions. And just for the first time really in that whole year, I just completely lost it. Like, I was absolutely inconsolable, and I had this sense of complete hopelessness.
Yeah.
And I sat in that for a little bit until I had that kind of real wake up moment of, my God, that will be my life. And I can't let that be the case. And it was in realizing that I was prompted to start to research what else I could do, and to start to take a little bit more control of the situation and of my life again.
You say, because you speak about, you know, how we sort of subcontract our authority onto other people, and especially doctors, or in that sort of health world, a bit less so now, but definitely at that time we're like, well, if they don't know what to do, then I'm doomed. But do you not feel that, generally speaking, as a society, we tend to do that with most aspects of our life?
Yeah, no, completely. I think it's quite a 360 situation. I think we so often, I certainly have done that, goodness knows how many times, want someone else to solve our problem for us.
Yeah.
And people so rarely do. So that was a very interesting realization. I remember when I first met my now husband, he talked about it so much, this idea you've got to internalize the solution. And
I love that.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? He's obsessed with it. It's like how it's his like number, I guess it's his sort of North Star in the way that he makes his decisions and lives his life, which is like, I am the only person accountable for my life and my actions, and only I am responsible for it, and I've got to solve everything for myself. And he doesn't do it in a way that's isolationist and it's pushing
incredibly
people away.
Saturnian, like these themes of like autonomy, authority, taking that responsibility. But these,
but it's quite scary.
They're terrifying. And
Exactly.
they're things that, especially in our, teenage years or even 20s, like we want to be adults, but we don't want the responsibility of adulthood. And then it's only really kind of in our late 20s, usually through experience, that we kind of find those within ourselves. But it sounds like you had to kind of try and discover them quite young because of the circumstances that you were in.
Yeah, I think I grew up very quickly from that point on, and maybe in my 20s I had a potentially a slightly different outlook. But I guess also it was a combination of suddenly having to take this real responsibility for my mental health, my physical health, my general well-being, and but also with my career taking off really, really quickly again when I was like 22, 23. You suddenly had what felt like a lot of responsibility.
Well, it's interesting that, you taking that responsibility for yourself because obviously you realized that it was going to determine your future. Like if you didn't, like you said earlier, it might just mean that you were stuck at home and weren't able to progress in the way that perhaps your friends might have been. But then whilst you started exploring this world, and then it became this huge thing that you probably didn't anticipate happening. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what was that experience like, going from feeling quite hopeless to then suddenly having this career that was exploding and everyone kind of wanting a piece of you?
I mean, utterly bizarre.
Mad.
Like, you definitely were not putting words in my mouth there. Like, it was a very unexpected unfolding of events. And
what were those events?
Well, it was a kind of strange combination of things, really. So it was in spring 2012 when I had this real wake up moment and felt, okay, I need to try and take some control of my life, because I felt I had lost all semblance of control over it. And I became very interested in diet and lifestyle and how the way that we look after our bodies can make such a big difference to our health. And it was fascinating, and I thought, look, if it's worked for other people, it might work for me. So I taught myself to cook, and I shared those recipes online, and Deliciously Ella was born. But I genuinely sit here today, and I'm really not just saying this, like, I didn't intend for other people to read it. It wasn't a means to an end by any.
It was like a cathartic.
It was just it was a personal
thing.
project. I needed something in my life. My life was so empty. And so exactly, it was a personal project, and I was actually so embarrassed about it.
What, when it started to take off?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was embarrassed about it for so long, but I was so...
Why?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was so embarrassed of it to start with, because I felt, who on earth am I to write about food and to share this online? Like, I have...
It's like an imposter syndrome sort of thing.
Fully, I have no authority, I have no experience, like, no one should read this. And so I said I won't show it to anybody until it hits 10,000 strangers, like 10,000 hits from strangers. And if it gets to that point, I'll show, a few friends. And it hit that point actually the week of my 21st birthday. And I showed some friends, and they showed some friends. And then within 2 years, the site had 130 million hits. And I had all these people. There was a map it was a WordPress site, and there was a map on the back end of the WordPress site, and you could see all the countries in the world where people were reading it. And it was just extraordinary. And people started to write in and tell me about what a difference it had made to their life and their own health, and them discovering the recipes. But even at that point, I still had a real imposter syndrome. And I think when the first book came out, which was in January 2015, and again, I really don't say this to be self-deprecating, because I have gently learned to start to back yourself, and how important that is. And I think especially as women, for us to encourage each other to do that and to champion each other. And But equally, like, I'm really not being self-deprecating to say, like, no one expected it to succeed. Like, you know, we could have sold.
But you hadn't told anyone about. Oh, you mean
no,
the book?
I had at this point the book. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean there was a dedicated online following. It wasn't that the expectation that we'd sell 10 books, but no one thought it was going to be some
What it
like
was.
smash hit. Like, absolutely not. And I think they'd printed 20,000 copies or so, and if they'd sold them all, they would have been pleased, and that would have been all good. But we sold out of copies before the book published. And
how many did it sell?
so we've sold 1.5 million books since then, which is in the UK, and I think it's had 30 plus translations. So yeah, quite a lot.
And how does that feel for you now, looking back? Does it feel real, and can you feel proud of it?
Yeah, no, I do. I now feel really, really proud of it. But I think at the time, because it was so unexpected, like I really wasn't ready for it.
And it's also such a contrast of where it sounds like you were at quite soon before then.
So it's so lost, such low self-esteem, felt so alien from people, had no sense of purpose, no sense of future, so lost. And then suddenly starting to explore what felt like this totally left field thing where people thought I was quite bizarre. And then you go from there to within like a week, you are on every TV show and having an interview in every newspaper. And I mean, I was only 23 at the time.
Super young, yeah.
So really young, and you're literally everywhere. And then obviously that quick switch from people talking to you to talking about you and having lots of opinions on you. And look, I don't think it's unfair to say I don't think my imposter syndrome was unjustified. It's really interesting because I think I try and be very honest when your stress or your concerns or anxiety or imposter syndrome feels valid to the extent that you are so far out of your comfort zone, or something really does make sense that it would be triggering that thought process in you. And I think when I look back on it, it would have been quite extraordinary if that hadn't been the case. Like, I was 23. I had started cooking at home as a small hobby. I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't intend to write it to kind of teach the nation. And suddenly that was the way.
You had that responsibility.
Yeah, and it was, you're the queen of this and, the leader of this, and being touted as something that I just hadn't positioned myself as, didn't see myself as. And I thought, oh, I'm not sure this is quite right.
Which I guess is a very common thing with, I guess, fame, when people have that kind of explosion that feels almost overnight, that they haven't quite caught up with it. And so I always find this concept of the internal world and the external one kind of feeling at odds with each other. Did you feel for a while that it took you a minute to catch up with what was happening in your external world?
Like years, like so much more than a minute. But yeah, I mean, the rest of 2015, I mean, I remember I had like really crippling anxiety. Like I just felt consistently like I'm going to get found out. People are going to realize that I don't know what I'm doing. And I said really clearly, in that book, I'm a home cook. This is my personal project. This is why I'm doing it. This is why I started it. So it's not like I was...
you weren't lying.
No, not at all. I wasn't trying to present myself as something that I wasn't. But I think sometimes the way things get picked up and get talked about, the headlines sometimes speak to something a bit different,
Of course. And naturally, the bigger something gets, you're always going to invite more criticism. And then that can be quite derailing if you don't feel 100% confident about it yourself.
Exactly. So I had a real sort of period of, I guess, reflection in 2015, and it was very busy work-wise, but it was really deciding, like, do I want this? Am I comfortable with this?
Why?
Well, because I felt if it's making you feel that anxious, like, is this really... Because
what was happening externally was this huge success, this like amazing book deal, and it's selling all around the world, and everything's expanding, but then you didn't feel good about it.
No, not at all. And I didn't feel, I think I hadn't probably had the time to, like, for want of a better word, reconnect with myself and kind of build myself back up. I think I've always said this. I've always felt it took a lot longer to regain my mental health than my physical health, because I think that sense. And I didn't have great self-esteem going into being really unwell. Like I really definitely didn't. I've always really struggled with that. And so I think it took a long time to build that back up. So
well, I think people think that if you become successful and famous, then you'll have good self-esteem. It just doesn't work that way.
No, I think if anything, it like gives a lot of permission to continue to chip away at it. And so I feel like I've almost spent the last 10 years proving to myself that success was justified to some extent.
When you said that you felt like you weren't sure whether you wanted to carry on, because I know that sometimes when something feels, I don't know, if you have imposter syndrome or whatever is going on in your own head, did you ever feel like you wanted to sabotage it?
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. And that was definitely quite, yeah, for sure, definitely. And just in like small ways of just not wanting to do things or turning things down. And I definitely, just continuously said no to things or step back from things. And for sure. And I feel like I've almost had to build a body of evidence to myself, you know, that like you do work hard and you have...
and you deserve it.
Yeah, like it's justified to an extent, which is really interesting. But I wish I had enjoyed it a bit more. And I think sometimes when we have these, and it happens in everyone's lives in different ways, and it's not always to do with work, but you have these kind of extraordinary moments where great things happen and things take off and there's something exciting going on that I think sometimes we're so surprised.
Well, it's almost like we're waiting for the other shoe to drop, so we can't really embrace the moment.
Exactly. I read this amazing book. It's my favorite book I've probably ever read, and it's called I May Be Wrong. I don't know if you've read it.
No.
Oh my gosh, it's so brilliant. It's by a Buddhist monk who unfortunately died. He must have passed away about two years ago. But it was just I'm pretty sure he was Swedish, and he had a very corporate job, and he sort of renounced everything and spent about 20 years living as a Buddhist monk. And he just had the most extraordinary outlook on life. And he has this saying in it that really resonated with me, which is maybe not. You know, it might be good, it might not be good. No one knows. No one knows the answer to any of that. And, you know, it's that idea that the only certainty is uncertainty. And I wish it's exactly that. I think a lot of us spend a lot of our time waiting for something to go wrong, like not really believing that this something good can last and it can stay and it's okay and you can enjoy it. And I think I really try and apply that to myself now when I feel nervous or I feel overwhelmed, even if it's something small like flying in turbulence, you know, that idea of like maybe it's a problem and maybe it's not a problem. And there's just as much to believe, exactly, that like every time you see that, like there's every reason to believe it will be good as it will be bad.
Yeah, I find that quite hard. I can kind of become quite obsessed with knowing or wanting to know the outcome of situations that you never really do.
Never. And that's the thing. And I think I spent so long like that I missed a lot of my life in a way. I mean, I hopefully still have a lot of it to go, but I think it's been such a kind of rich experience the last decade, building the company and all the experiences that have come with that and motherhood. But I think I've been so busy waiting for something bad to happen that actually I haven't enjoyed way too much of it.
Do you feel like now, a decade on, you have enough evidence to be like, actually, maybe it's going to be okay?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you have enough. Yeah, I think I probably had enough times where I've looked at this idea of like maybe not, and realised like actually very, very few things are as bad as they initially seem. And so
or even if
that jumping to conclusions is largely quite unhelpful.
Well, you end up causing yourself unnecessary pain.
Yeah, and I honestly laugh at it so much. I look at it and I'm like, you were so worried about this, and look, it all turned out okay in the end.
Well, you know, a decade on and essentially building an empire, I feel like you are building a bit of an empire with your partner as well, which I want to get into. What have been some of the challenges that you face, and how much has the vision for Deliciously Ella changed and evolved along the way?
I don't think the vision's changed at all, which is really interesting.
What was the vision?
It was, in the simplest way, to be really useful. I felt so desperate in where I was when I was ill, and so empowered by unlocking these simple changes that I wanted to share that with people. And I wanted to do it in a way that was useful, that was meaningful, and where I could be a kind of unlocker of it and carrier of it, but it wasn't all about me. I realized that very, very quickly after that, when we were saying that time of anxiety after the first book came out, and that slight sense of notoriety, and realizing like I don't want this to be all about me. I want this to be about this mission of helping people eat better in a simple everyday way, and I can be a flag carrier for that, but it's not going to be all about me and my life all day, every day.
Which I think, I mean, before you carry on that, is such an important takeaway for anyone, just having that mindset shift of most things tend to be quite me orientated, and we live in that world more than ever today, but actually making it about how can I be of service? How can what I do help people? Just alleviate some of that anxiety in itself.
Yeah, I mean, that is, I mean, I guess it's a bit strange to be like, that's the best thing that's ever happened to me, but it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because I think I definitely am like a worrier and a catastrophizer and someone who can go like internal very, very quickly. And I think having something that you're really connected to that's so much bigger than you, that's not really about you, and that sense of purpose has been extraordinarily powerful. And so in that sense, the vision hasn't really ever changed. It's always been about helping people eat better in a simple everyday way. And of course the execution of it has evolved massively as the company has grown, but actually the mission is still identical, which
that's so nice.
It's really nice, and I think that's why I still love it.
And in 2015, so when you had that moment of thinking, I don't know whether this is for me or whether I can sustain this, what was the moment that brought you back on track?
It was the simplicity of this community and of this purpose. And I think because of the personal experience of being at that extraordinary low, like when I just, I still get messages from people every day saying what we've done and has made such a big difference to their life. And, sometimes it's in a small way and sometimes it's in a really massive way of the extent to which it's changed their health and their well-being. And when you read that, you just think, who cares if I feel a bit anxious? Who cares if someone doesn't like me? Who cares if someone writes something about me I don't like? Like, if this really is going to affect hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people and genuinely improve their life, like, God, that's worth it.
And also, what an amazing feeling to get
it's the most
message
humbling.
Or meet someone that says, this has changed my life and I've got my health back on track, to have played that role in someone's life.
It's phenomenal. Like, it is honestly like the most, it's a massive gift. And so it keeps you, look, don't get me wrong, sometimes it wanes and I, knackered and I'm like disengaged for a week, but it's like the most amazing anchor, and it's like it keeps drawing you back in. Totally. And I think having that, and whenever people send a message and they're like, I want to start a business, I always say, like, make sure you know why you're going to do it, because to your point, like, what have the challenges been? I mean, we could sit here for at least a year.
Top three.
Detail them.
Top three.
I mean, I think honestly the biggest challenges are when you think you're going to go bust. Like, that's definitely when you think, oh God, this is really stressful, for sure. And especially.
And how many times has that happened?
I mean, in the early days, like probably 3 or 4 where you feel like you're really, on a knife edge.
Which is, I imagine, as you're expanding.
Yeah, and different reasons, but that's extraordinary. And when COVID happened and everything stalled, we had a personal guarantee over our house and all that, and again, you see no sales, and it's really challenging. And then all sorts of other challenges along the way. I think from a personal perspective, the biggest challenge was probably also in balancing like all the other things that are going on in your life with work, and when those become really overwhelming, that's difficult. So in 2017 my mother-in-law was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and she passed away a year later in May 2018. So navigating that, for example,
because for those that don't know, you work with your husband.
I work with my
which
husband,
pretty unusual.
It's amazing, honestly. But we don't know any different. Like, we met 3 weeks after my first book came out, and within a week we moved in together. So we went on 3 dates, Thursday, Sunday, the next Thursday, and we never left each other since that Thursday. And after kind of 2 weeks or so, he started helping me with Deliciously Ella and things that I was doing. And after like 2 months, he quit his job and we started building Deliciously Ella together. So it's been our lives are so entwined in every capacity that it's, I think when people are surprised that we work together, we can't really...
You don't know anything
We don't know any different. We don't know each other. We don't know our relationship without that. But it does, because it is our whole life in so many ways. It feels very much like our life's work. It's quite extraordinary to share that together and share that sense of pride when things go well and that excitement, but also to have that total unwavering understanding and compassion.
The challenges.
And that sense you're completely in it together.
Because I guess when you are your business, there's never really an off switch at the end of the day. So I was going to say, you know, how do you manage keeping that stuff slightly separate from home life? But it probably sounds like it probably isn't.
No, it's not. It's like there's not really any starting and stopping between. And I think initially we kind of fell because people talk so much about work-life balance and boundaries. Like, do we need that? Do we need to have this like rule? We won't talk about X, or we won't talk about Y, or we won't do this when we're away. And we realize that we love it. Like, we love what we do. It's so fulfilling and it's so exciting. And actually that's very much who we both are. And I think that's taken, again, like a really long time to accept, in a way, like who I am and what I really enjoy. And like, I'm a real introvert. I really don't enjoy going out. I enjoy, you know, being with my very, very close friends, but I don't particularly enjoy like big social occasions. Events, like, you know, I like a small, cozy, quiet life, and I like just to be with my kids, my husband. Like that's really my idea of absolute heaven. And I love the challenge of work. Like, I find it more exciting and more stimulating than a party. And I know that, and I'm like, even now I say that and I'm like, oh my gosh, what will people think?
I love that. I think that's fantastic. Really, but it's also knowing like what authentically lights you up.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, like I don't always enjoy it. Like every day, you know, some days are an absolute slog. Of course there are, and there's lots of practical, boring things involved, like in anyone's life. But with anything. Exactly. But actually, when I think about what I'm really excited about, I feel more excited about building our life around our work than I do about lots of other things. And so, but again, I think we have these like really predetermined images and ideas of like what someone should be and what someone should appear as and what they should be excited about and what a kind of cool person looks like, essentially. And I think it's really interesting as you get older and a bit more experience, I guess, to start to like dismantle that and say, no, that's not who I am. That's not what it looks like for me, and that's okay. Yeah,
which I think often comes post Saturn return, when you're like, whatever it is for you, you're like, actually, I don't like going to those parties, or I'm tired of trying to be this type of person, and actually just embracing the things that bring you joy.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter what those are, and they're going to be so different for all of us, but I think it's just that full acceptance of like, nothing's right, nothing's wrong. It's just a very personal decision.
We touched on it a second ago about, you know, when people ask you about starting up a business. I feel at the moment there is more of a desire than ever before for people to do something that aligns with their purpose, you know, to have something that's a real mission, like for why they are here. And on one hand, I think that that's like a really romantic, beautiful concept. And then sometimes I'm like, but is that a realistic thing to preach to everyone? Of course, some people are very fortunate that they're able to do something that totally aligns with who they are. But I don't know. And so I'm curious, from your experience, and probably given that you have a lot of people asking you about this, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think it is romanticized. Like, yeah, definitely. I think there is this glamorization of starting your own business, being your own boss,
quitting your 9 to 5.
Exactly. That is so far removed from the reality of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's about knowing, it's just as we were saying, it's like knowing who you are and what you really enjoy, because equally on the flip side, I think if building something and really kind of focusing your mind and your attention on that is something that does light you up, and you are more excited about creating a tool, a class, a business, a product, a service about something that's been instrumental to your life, that you're so excited about and you're really passionate that it has a role in other people's lives, and you want to share that.
You need to share
that.
that.
You feel really like, for want of a better called, to share that. Like, you're so excited about it. It means so much to you to do that. And you are so willing to put that above and beyond essentially everything else in your life. I do think it gives you so much.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not, I think it is the worst idea you'll ever have.
And the worst advice. But I mean, I feel like every podcaster at the moment is like, I quit my I just have to acknowledge, like, we're two women of privilege that do our own podcast and other things, and there's so many factors that play into that. So I think to dish out advice for people that's like, you just quit it and you start an online course, I'm like, I don't know whether that's very good advice.
I think exactly, like, the vast majority of businesses fail. That's just a fact. And creating something that can sustain your life for decades from a financial perspective, it's very difficult. And
but even you said, you know, the biggest challenges were thinking that you were going to go bankrupt. And of course, like, I look at it from the outside as everyone else, like, oh, it must have just been, you know, success all the way. But you don't realize, actually, because I was speaking to someone that was talking about staying in their job and they didn't know whether they wanted to stay in it for a few years, and they get like a sign-on fee to do it. And then I was thinking in my head, I was like, God, I'd love to have a sign-on fee to keep doing Saturn Returns for like 4 years. You know, it's like such a different mentality. But I've kind of cut you off from what you were saying.
No, not at all. No, it was exactly that. Like, and you know, I don't know any other founders who have had a different experience where you've had to put your work above friends, above going to weddings, above going on holidays. I think we cancelled 17 different attempts that we took at taking time off and going on a holiday were cancelled in the first 4 years of working together.
Really?
Like, it's just what you do. Like, and you don't complain about it. And sometimes it's on Christmas, and sometimes it's like, you never know when the problem's coming. And, you know, so no one, you know, I don't have anything in my diary for next year. Like, I don't plan anything more than, like,
because you can't?
No, because you can't. Because you are fully married to and committed to your business, and you don't know.
And then married to your business
And then married to your business partner, which is brilliant because then you have complete appreciation of it.
Because that can be challenging.
Oh my gosh.
For a partnership, if one person doesn't understand that space to kind of negotiate it and be like, why are you working all weekend or whatever?
Exactly. And that's just what you've got to do. And I think that's the bit that people don't talk about enough. And so this idea of like, just go and do what you want to do, it doesn't actually look like that. And the amount of uncertainty and stress that comes with it is extraordinary. And I also think there is this danger of turning any hobby or something that you enjoy into something that has to be more than that. Like, it's okay. It
can kill it.
Exactly. It's more than okay to have a job that, like, it's fine, you quite like, it's okay, it doesn't light you up, but it very much pays the bill, and it doesn't take over your life. And outside of that, you have the things that light you up, and that you commit to in a way that you really enjoy, and they're just there for enjoyment. And that is massive success too. Like, I think that this success is so different for everybody. It's defined so differently, and I think there is this danger of, like, you love astrology, so quit your job and go into work in astrology, or you're very interested in health and wellness, so like start your own health and wellness business. And like, unfortunately, the vast majority of the time, like, those businesses don't succeed, and it's obviously a particularly challenging environment at the moment.
But also, like you said, it's so important. I think people are neglecting that piece around, because as we go into the working world and we're trying to, like, make a living, I feel like most people cut off the things that light them up because they're not their earner. So they might do something like painting when they were little, or, younger, and then they just stop. And it's not necessarily to say, like, maybe they are supposed to be a painter, but how about inviting that back into your life and then reassessing how you feel about what you do more holistically? Because it tends to just, work does tend to kind of take over, and then people spend their spare time kind of escaping, you know, their reality. And then it can become a bit of a vicious cycle.
Totally, and feeling like everything they do has to like reach a certain point, you know, like you love yoga, so now you have to be a yoga teacher. It's like, no, you don't. You could just go to the class and enjoy it. And it doesn't matter if you're, you know, people say you can't be good or bad at yoga, but it doesn't matter if you're like the most advanced in the class or not. It doesn't mean anything. You're there because you enjoy it. And I think that we're not great at that in our society of just, and it's actually one of the things I really love with my kids is like they love arts and crafts and colouring, and you just colour
for the sake of it,
for the sake of colouring, like, and I find that really, really enjoyable.
Has it made you tap into those things yourself?
Definitely, and I really enjoy their perspective, and they do things because they think they're fun, and that is it. And I really like that.
And it's sad that we stamp that out.
Totally, exactly. And we think that we have to become good at everything that we do. And as I said, like they colour and they do stickers because they enjoy doing stickers. They're not doing it because they want to be really, really good at colouring. And I think that this like obsessive nature of proving ourselves and perfectionism that's so deeply embedded in so many of our cultures and the way that we live our lives and our upbringing. And of course, like, you know, not to be kind of overly simplistic about it, but of course, you know, the internet and social media plays a role in that because we get these totally false insights into people's lives. Like nothing you see on social media is real. Not because people are lying to you, like absolutely not. I think that's a bit, you know, that's too far the other way, but because you're seeing literally,
I mean, some people.
Well, no, many people
are. But yeah, they're giving you like a highlight trailer of.
They're giving you a millisecond. You know, they're giving you like literally like a millisecond of their life. And
well, how have you found navigating that space throughout your entire career, and how do you think it's changed?
I definitely have like much more of an arm's length relationship to social media
than you did,
for sure. Definitely. I think I just feel that I really like social media. I think it has a really amazing role, and I think there are lots of things that it's done that we don't talk about the positives enough. You know, take cooking, for example. Like, it has really democratized cooking. Before, I think people had much bigger sense of like, I'm not a good cook, because cooking was very much dominated by what you saw on TV. It was much more kind of the Master Chef kind of era.
Quite inaccessible.
Exactly. And it's, you know, it's very complicated cooking. And I understand why that doesn't feel that appealing. And now you have people showing you what they make for dinner after work in 15 minutes. And it's like a packed lunch. And it's so simple. And it breaks it down.
That's a really good point, actually, because that's probably played a huge role in how people have become more healthy.
Exactly.
They have more awareness.
Totally. And it's the same with like quick tips on fitness or like really great ideas about like, I don't know, I always get served these sorts of things, but like, you know, an IKEA wardrobe hack, like how you take those wardrobes and turn it into something that looks like the most amazing built-in wardrobe. Like, this is great. That is great. Those are great content and pieces of content. Like, I follow lots of different child psychologists and nutritionists, and like I have learned a lot of very valuable information there. But the problem is that because we all spend too much time on it, I think we just think that it's much more real than it is. And as I said, it's not that what these people, of course you're absolutely right, there's a lot of it which is actually just, yes, a slightly exaggeration of the truth or bending of it. But a lot of it is that you follow this person, you followed them for years and years and years, you check in with them almost every single day, so you think you know them, but actually like they're only telling you, you know, a fraction of it. And again, I'm very quick to say, like, I think so often that's also the case, because lots of things aren't their stories to tell. You know, like with me, for example, like with parenting, I don't talk really about my children on social media.
Well, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you like.
Yeah, but also
whatever you say, someone's gonna have.
That's not my story to tell. Like, it's not. It's not my. I don't feel that it. For me, it's right to come on and say like, this one of my children did this today, and I found that really difficult, and etc. Like, that's their life and that's their story.
As in your children?
Yeah, I don't think it's right for me to, you know, look, some days are like an absolute nightmare, you know, and they're screaming.
But how are they going to
shouting,
feel when they're adults?
Exactly.
Kind of like,
it's not
why
right.
Did you share that time I threw like a nappy at your head or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think that's, I just don't feel like that's my information to give, or like, you know, I remember, it was a difficult few years. My parents went through a very, very, very difficult divorce, and all sorts of things came out in the wash. And
what, more recently?
No, a couple of years ago. And then very shortly after that was when, my mother-in-law got cancer, and it was, you know, she didn't want to talk about it for the first 6 months. And then she actually really wanted, she was a politician, she actually then really wanted to use her profile to champion the development of different potential cures or ways to prolong life with brain cancer, because it's an area that hasn't come on for decades. But so she did then want to talk about it, but there was a period of time where, you know, we were in the worst months of our life, and you wouldn't see any of that on social media because it's not my story to tell. And I think people forget that a lot.
Yeah, and everyone's very quick to want to share perhaps for the wrong
exactly
reasons.
Or like, you know, you're saying, what are the challenges with work? Like, they are literally, you know, never ending, but most of them they're not appropriate to share online. Like, you get to a point where that's not right. Your customers can't know that, you know, that's not, or the whole team can't know that. The team is now basically 100 people. Like, it's not appropriate for all information to be shared. And I think we have this like expectation that we should know everything about everyone all of the time because of the way that the world is today. And it's just like, it's just not how it works in reality. So I think,
Do you think you're quite a private person?
I'm a real mix, actually. Like, I'm very open about lots of things. And there's not really anything that I'm not happy to talk about, but I'm probably not the first to volunteer all of the information. And I think having lived a not public life, and again, that was a really conscious decision really early on. Like, I didn't want to be, I'm very happy to be known for what I do, but I didn't want to be a public figure, you know, so I didn't want to go to parties and events and be photographed to talk about what I was wearing, etc. Like,
Did you feel a pressure to do that at points?
No, none. And I just didn't want to do it. And I'm sure there's parts of doing that would have furthered my career, but I just didn't want to do that. I think I've always wanted like as much autonomy over myself and my life as I could, and that just wasn't. That's not to say that's not a bad life choice. It's just not the life choice for me. That's not what I enjoy, and it wasn't particularly appealing for me. And so, yeah, I guess I made a decision really early on to not want to do those sorts of things, to be known for starting Deliciously Ella, for growing Deliciously Ella, for helping people eat better, to look after their health and their well-being, but not for just being me.
And with the stuff, because you said like a few years ago it was quite challenging, you had a lot of personal stuff going on, then running the business with your husband, like what was that like, managing all of those things together?
Just really intense.
Yeah.
So intense. It was honestly like it was just like we were living on, you know, if you're watching Sky or something and you do like times 30, it felt like we lived on times 30. Like everything, the speed at which things have happened has just been extraordinary. And actually it was when Sky, who's my older daughter, so she's almost 4.5 now, and she was about 7 months old, I think, when COVID started. And it was that lockdown and that stopping at the beginning of lockdown where I sat down and I was like, oh my goodness, in 5 years since my first book came out, we've published another 5 cookbooks, like hired, you know, gosh, however many people, we've got a team of this many people, we've got products in 10,000 shops, we've opened 3 cafes, we've closed 2 of them, we've turned one of them into a restaurant, we've done this, we've launched an app, we've like, it was just, it's like, oh my gosh, we've done a lot of things, and at the same time have navigated, we've met each other, we've got
children,
married, exactly, like my whole family have kind of broken up in lots of different ways. Both my parents have got new partners, my dad's getting remarried, or he is now remarried. My husband's family, my mother-in-law passed away, and their family dynamics all shifted, and then we had our own baby, and it's just sort of sitting.
So much.
We'd moved house 3 times, we'd moved office 3 times. We'd nearly gone bust definitely 3 times. We'd had investors, we then bought the investors out, and it was like,
I wanted
mad.
that is
Yeah,
sounds
it was a roller
so.
coaster.
I'm exhausted hearing that. But what I want to talk about the investor bit, because I remember, I think you telling me that last time I saw you, which is a really interesting piece that I wanted to cover. But back to you and your husband. Obviously, you have your role as husband and wife, but what are your roles in business? And like by that, I don't mean like who's CEO, that kind of thing. Like who is the vision, and like do you have a kind of clear dynamic of how that works and how they complement each other?
Yeah, and I do think that's really important. Like I know I was saying earlier, like how much I love working together, and I think that's because we're so aligned in our values and what matters to the two of us. And again, I think that's been really important. We're like very, very similar people in that way, but equally like the way that we think and our brains from a more professional perspective is so different. Like for me, I'm all vision, like 100% vision, and he is 100% making things happen. And
you need that.
You absolutely
one
need
doesn't
that.
work without the other,
like not even a teeny tiny bit. And like again, when I always say, and I'm so quick to say, like Deliciously Ella would never ever be anywhere near where it is today if I had done it by myself. And I think people again think that's like almost like misogynistic and like giving, you know what I mean, like taking too much away from you, but it's really not. Like
it's about really acknowledging like the partnership, and sure. Also, you know, equally he wouldn't have been able to do it without you.
Exactly, we've really enabled each other.
But I think a mistake that a lot of people make is thinking that they can be all the things, and you can have a vision for something that can be enough of a reason to do it, but without having the team or the people around you to help realize that dream, it can often, you know, not manifest the way that it's supposed to.
Yeah, I think learning to know what you don't know is really a brilliant skill.
Did that come into play when you met him, or did you start to know that before?
I knew that before because I also knew that, yeah, I knew this, like the kind of practical application of the business was never going to be my strong suit. Mm-hmm. So I always felt that Deliciously Ella would never reach kind of full potential with just me.
But did you always have the vision for it too?
I think I always was curious as to what it could be, but he has definitely brought like a different level of confidence and to the vision for sure.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And in terms of the investor thing, because that's was quite a huge thing to do. How did you get them involved, and then what was the decision making process around deciding to kind of bring it back in between you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we were laughing about this last night. We seem to have this like constant desire to roll the dice, like just like keep risking things again and again and again. But we brought some investors into the business in 2017. Yeah. 2017, 2018. And
did you always think you'd want an investor?
No, not really, but we needed a bit of money for our cash flow basically. So it was a very small amount, and they didn't own a huge amount. And then what became really clear to us was, again, like we wanted full control, full autonomy over the company and what it was going to be and what it was going to do. And we didn't feel that we could have that completely in that situation. And so we made the decision to buy them out. So that was in early 2021 that we decided to do that, which is really unusual, obviously, like especially at that point, like most people are trying to bring investors into their company, and we were trying to remove them and have this family-owned company, which again feels a little bit unusual. But we've just we wanted full control over it. We wanted to be able to grow it and develop it in the way that we wanted.
Mm-hmm. Was that tough?
Well, I mean, that was one of those situations where when we made the decision to do it, and we really went back and forth on it, because it was a big decision, and we took a multi-million-pound loan to be able to do it, and that was guaranteed against like us and our house and the business and all the rest of it. And so it was
high risk.
Yeah, and we had 2 tiny children, like a 6-month-old and an 18-month-old, and so you are definitely rolling the dice. The easy option would not be to do that. The easy option would be to, sell their stake and some more definitely to someone else, but it wasn't what we felt had like the biggest integrity and to the company. But we did it in a different environment, and it felt like we were coming to the end of COVID and everything was looking really sunny. And then obviously the Omicron variant came out, and then by that Christmas things were looking like
bit bleak again,
really bleak again. And then obviously we then had, you know, the war in Ukraine and all the inflationary pressures. So the next year felt really overwhelming because suddenly we were paying infinitely more on the interest, and we had a lot of time where then we couldn't get stock out because of shortage of ingredients, or because the factories were closed because of Omicron, because of COVID. And so that was one of the kind of darkest moments. I think also we were just so burnt out from like a few years of consistent problems between the beginning of COVID and that point. And so now I don't regret it for a second, but there was definitely a moment of like, oh my gosh, like why don't we just choose the easy option?
But I guess you wouldn't learn, you know, the amazing lessons and
no,
do you
and
feel
the
that
easy
it's
option's not often the like most rewarding or the
Exactly.
funnest option. But we then sat down like 3 months ago, and we sat down and we were having dinner together, and we were like, this is the first time in 8 years that our life has felt calm. The last 2 months have felt calm. Our like kids sleep through the night, they're really settled, one's at school, one's at nursery. Like this is great. Like maybe we've done it. Like maybe we have, all of this hard work was like super worth it, and like we can breathe. And for the first time in like 8 years, it's always been fun, and the mission's always been there, and the excitement and the drive and the like desire to make a change and to play a meaningful role in society, for want of a better word, has been there. But so it's been great, but it's been just
not without its
relentless
challenges,
and like and there's
a reason that most fail and not many can achieve what you guys have.
And then one of our main suppliers went into administration, and so we were like, great, let's buy a factory.
Oh shit! So that's
anyway, and then we did
it's
that
just
today.
Inevitably going to come with its own
So now
challenges.
we're like, okay,
maybe that's what you guys like thrive off. You know,
it must be, because we apparently love to do it. So that's our next big challenge. But it is there's a reason we keep doing it and keep looking for challenge, I think, which is I said earlier, like I think it is what we really enjoy. And there is a moment where the risk feels a bit too great and the pressure feels a bit suffocating, and you wake up in the middle of the night, can't really breathe. But actually, like most of the time, it's what makes our life really fun.
And also you have each other to, you know, be supportive throughout
Exactly.
it. What would your advice be for entrepreneurs that have, you know, something that they really need to do, let's say? Because I feel that a lot of people think that investment is always the route, and obviously it's very nuanced depending on who you are and what you want to achieve. But what would your advice be for those setting out and trying to really build something that has a lot of autonomy?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I think it speaks to a lot of what we've spoken about so far, which is that other people don't often have the answer. And that's not, by the way, to say that you know best always. Like, absolutely not. Like, everyone has their own answers is probably a better way of saying it. But I think there is this like image in people's mind that like, I'll get money from someone and that will unlock the success. It's almost like that same, instead of believing that you internalize the answer, it's this sense of like, right, when I have someone else come on board, like that's when everything will fly, like that's when my idea will work. And I think sometimes that's how people look at investment.
Yeah, it's another way of like subcontracting your authority.
Yeah, and your success in so many ways. And I think, you know, gosh, the number of businesses that we've seen start and stop in the time that we've been doing this has been huge. And so many of them have taken on absolutely vast amounts of money, and it hasn't always been the answer. And I think, you know, and I don't mean to be overly cheesy, but I do think if you can build a brand or a product, a good, a services, a company that has meaning to somebody, that is worth like infinitely more to some extent. And like on a really practical and kind of boring example, like we see that all the time. You know, we'll launch something new into a supermarket, and as we'll one of our competitors who's owned by like a very large conglomerate, and they will spend literally like several £1 million on a marketing campaign, and we will spend £5. Literally it's just like organic social media, and ours sell a lot better. We are now outselling almost all of them, and we still, we have a very small team, all things considered. Like, we have a almost non-existent marketing budget, and it's always about like, these products stand for something, this business stands for something, and I think people connect to that and relate to that. And I think,
so do you think it comes down to authenticity?
I mean, I think it's about connection, isn't it? And something meaning something to you. And you see that, like, amazing brands, whether that's, Patagonia, like, it really stands for something and it really means something to people. And it's amazing the longevity of that. And I think there is this desire, like, I'll come in, I'll pay a lot of money to a branding agency, and I'll spend a lot of money on bus adverts and tube adverts, and then I'll succeed. And I'm just not convinced, having watched the space for quite a long time, that is the case. And
it's not a quick fix.
No, I just don't think. I really passionately believe, I guess, if there was like almost one message from this, that like quick fixes don't exist. And it doesn't matter what aspect of your life you're looking at. It doesn't matter if that's your relationships, because ultimately, like, great relationships come when you have a great relationship with yourself, and there is no quick fix to that. With your health, there is no quick fix to that. Like, you're not going to change the way that you feel, whether that's mentally or physically, within a day, a week, a month. And it's also a lifelong commitment to various different practices to keep looking after yourself. And it's the same in your work. Like, there is never going to be an easy answer. There's never going to be a silver bullet. Like, life just doesn't work like that. And it's frustrating to some extent, because gosh, wouldn't it be nice?
But would it though?
Well, no, probably not, because that you wouldn't have the, that whole idea of like, you can't have Friday night without Monday morning. You've got to have the lows to have the highs. And I
Totally.
do believe that. But I think that we just live in this world, and, not to be kind of like too flippant about it, but, you go on Amazon, and like with Amazon Prime, like,
everything's instant
anything you want is
yeah.
arriving, even as early as like a few hours later. But tomorrow, you don't want to make dinner, and you used to live in a city, like, you click a button and someone will bring you food within like 20 minutes. You don't want to go and get groceries. Like, again, you can go on an app and they can be cycled to your door. Like, we have this, we are learning, and I think it's really interesting. I think about my kids and like what that generation think of, because they really do believe you can click any button and the answer can be there very, very, very quickly. And
life doesn't work.
But life just doesn't work like that. Like, the meaningful facets of your life, whether that is your health, your relationships, your career, like, it never works like that. Like, if something is too good to be true, then it's largely, like, it's not really true. Like, yeah. It's, and certainly often doesn't last.
I mean, that's just so much beautiful wisdom. Like, I
or it's really depressing. I don't know which way.
No, it's not, because it really encapsulates everything about Saturn Returns. Because I used to be someone that was like, wanted every shortcut and quick fix.
Yeah, me too.
And now I've shifted my mentality. Like, before, I started doing this work, if someone said, oh, you have to do this for a year before you get, I'd be like, oh no, that's way too long. Do you know what I mean? But now I'm like, that's fine. My concept of time has really changed. And I just think the landscape of social media and all of this instant gratification has meant that everyone wants the shortcut. But I'm like, but you don't really get anything from the shortcut. Even if you get the thing you think you want, you won't pick up the wisdom along the way. And that's the stuff that gives you longevity.
Yeah, no, it's so true. But we are all drawn to it. And so I think there's nothing, like, it's not to be self-critical or like judgmental of anybody else who like are desperate for that. But it is, I think it's just, it lacks the longevity.
And is there anything else that you would like to add for our listeners? I feel that there's like a big theme here around autonomy, which I think is a beautiful takeaway, but any kind of final send off?
Oh, that feels the pressure.
I know, I really put the pressure on you for that.
Have something really wise to say. Definitely read I May Be Wrong. It's the best book in
I'm
the
going to
world.
read that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I think this idea of like building your own life for you and really trusting in who you are, and it doesn't matter if it's different from anybody else, and it doesn't matter if it fits the mold that you think that you should live into or not, and really trusting that, I think, has extraordinary benefits, but also knowing that everything takes a long time to unfold, and nothing is smooth trajectory. There is nothing in life where you just, even if it's a long-term answer, not a quick fix, like you're going to take many steps backwards on the way forwards. And I think that's, again, just something that we don't talk about enough, and so we think doesn't happen for other people.
But it does.
Like everyone goes down just as much as they go up, and if you end up a little higher than when you started, that's when you're winning.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Ella, for joining me.
Thank you.
I love this conversation. So thanks for being on Saturn Returns.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode with me and Ella for this incredible conversation. I learnt so much from it. Ella might not realise it, but she is so Saturnian by nature, and everything that she talked about really, really, like I said, encapsulates the essence of what I'm trying to teach, of all the things that I learned from Saturn. And I think if you guys are listening, you probably feel it too. This wave at the moment of instant gratification, quick fix, overnight success is just such a misconception of how life actually works. And I truly believe, everything Ella mentioned about there is no quick fix, there is no shortcut, and actually there's going to be a lot of setbacks and obstacles along the way. But, as long as you continue to rise a little bit more than you were when you started, then you are winning. And so I hope that this is a reminder that what we see online isn't an accurate depiction of reality. And actually, if you can do something that aligns with your authentic truth, your values, and you are going through your Saturn return, hopefully it will be able to, all those things you'll be able to shift into a position where you actually want to build something substantial that has meaning, that has longevity, and that has the foundations. So thank you very much, Ella, for joining me. And I hope you share this to the audience, not Ella, but I hope you share this with someone who you think might find it useful, who's perhaps going through some of these themes or struggles, or just share it online, because that helps us get discovered by more like-minded free thinkers like yourself. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and remember, you are not alone. Goodbye.